what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be movie content. For today's video, we are going to go over everything I watched in the month of May. I have a ton to talk about because I watched 7 movies in May. We got 3 TV shows, 1 dance play, and I'll get to that, and then 2 concerts. So I am just going, that was a weird way to talk about numbers, but anyway, I'm just gonna jump right into it because there's a lot. Okay, so the first movie I watched last month, I went to the theaters to see, and I saw Tarot. This is about a group of friends who went away for someone's birthday party, and they played with a haunted deck of tarot cards, and then they began dropping like flies one by one. I went to see this just because of my AMC rewards card, and like there was literally nothing I wanted to see in theaters last month, including Challengers. I'm sorry, I had no desire to see it, but now I'm regretting seeing this movie rather than Challengers, because I only gave this 2 out of 5 stars. This actually made my bottom 3 worst films of the year so far. This is another horror movie that's just incredibly generic and stupid, and it's probably why it came out, you know, in May and not during the Halloween season. It follows the same formula so many other dumb horror movies I saw this year follow. Got a group of teenagers who do something stupid. They begin to die mysteriously. Then they start fighting about who to talk to. Then you have the old woman, because it's always an old white woman, who comes in to give this grave wisdom, who comes in to info dump, basically. Then the old woman tries to help everyone, but she dies within 2 seconds. Then you finally get the backstory of the haunted item, and then the backstory of the haunted item is more interesting than the plot of the movie itself. I actually really liked the background of the haunted tarot cards. Instead, I got a movie about just a bunch of dumb teens who shouldn't have been touching that stuff in the first place. This had some Disney Channel-ass acting and dialogue, which kind of shocked me because in other shitty horror movies I watched this year, I didn't even have that type of complaint. So that was really weird because I believe none of these people were even on Disney Channel, so I don't know what happened there. And this movie apparently is forgettable because I don't remember how the problem was solved. Because I didn't care at that point. I was rolling my eyes, I was scoffing. Some scenes definitely made me laugh when they weren't supposed to just because of the ridiculousness of it all. And then most of all, the ending of this movie actually pissed me off. And when I say ending, I mean the post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, whatever you want to call it. It was clearly done for comedic purposes because the character, that was another thing. There's a character in this movie that's so fucking obnoxious, and it involved this character, so it was clearly for comedic purposes. However, what happened to him breaks the rules of the haunted tarot cards. And the ending, the scene just told me that all of these characters could have easily saved themselves the entire movie. Given the tone of this movie and how this movie is not at all self-aware, like that was not the intention of the scene. But it just completely ruined things for me. So again, I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. If I were to rank my worst movies of the year, this is literally number 3. But then I did a rewatch. Me and my coworker were talking about this movie. Like last month I watched Tarzan because we were talking about the music. And in that same conversation, we were talking about the soundtrack to the movie Spirit. Because let me tell you, the music in this movie goes so hard. They do not make soundtracks like this anymore. This movie is about a wild horse that gets captured and they are trying to domesticate it. However, our main character Spirit does not want to be domesticated. I think this movie still holds up. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and quite frankly, the romance made me more emotional than it did as a kid, which is hilarious because the romance made me tear up, but it's a romance between 2 horses. This movie does have some voiceover work done by Matt Damon that could be a little awkward. It seems awkward now that I'm older, but given the target audience, I didn't mind it when I was that age, and like quite frankly, due to nostalgia and just the fact that I'm aware I'm no longer the target audience, I was able to push it aside. It was no big deal. And it made me remember that there's actually a new Spirit franchise, and I only know that because I used to, you know, babysit my little cousin when she used to watch the show, and it's just so funny because in that show, he's not a wild horse, he's a domesticated horse, when the whole point of the movie is that he did not want that, so that's interesting why they couldn't just create a new character for that. But whatever, again, this movie still holds up, and quite frankly, he's a really hot horse. You know that one conversation that went viral on Twitter like a year or 2 ago about like hot animals, like the tiger in Zootopia and then Kovu in The Lion King 2? I am going to add Spirit to that list of hot animals. For my next movie, I am continuing my journey of trying to watch all the Best Picture nominees. So I watched the movie Mutiny on the Bounty. This is about a group of sailors. I think they are part of the British Navy. They're on a ship and they get really pissed off at the captain, so they throw a mutiny. I actually had a lot of fun with this movie. To me, this is a very fun adventure movie. The guy who plays Captain Bligh does such a good job at playing the biggest asshole in cinema history, one of the biggest assholes in all of cinema, that I was rooting for the mutiny to happen. Like, fuck everyone else, even the people like, because there were several people that didn't agree with Clark Gable's character and they wanted to stick with their captain, and I was like, fuck them, this guy is pissing me off. Overthrow the boat, sink the boat, do anything, like kill the guy, I don't care. The mutiny itself was just kind of interesting to watch just because the mutiny itself was very short-lived, because this movie's like I want to say 2.5 hours long, and the mutiny was like 10 minutes, so very short, all things considered. And despite the long build-up, because it doesn't happen until like an hour into the movie, but it's just so action-packed, like within that span, something is always happening and you have to look everywhere on screen to capture everything. Because if you look on the right side of the screen, you're gonna miss something important on the left. It's a lot, but because it's so action-packed and there's so many things happening, it still felt very rewarding despite how short it was. There's some scenes in Tahiti, and I actually really like how it was handled. Because it was made very clear that Clark Gable and co were actually invaders to this land. So it still gave the people of Tahiti a sense of dignity rather than making them out to be rather than turning them into like a comedic effect, basically, that was common in a lot of movies back then. And I really liked the set designs of this film. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is The Great Ziegfeld, and this is the true story of Ziegfeld, who worked on Broadway. This is a middle of the road film for me. First of all, it is 3 hours long, and it feels like a long movie. There have been long movies that I've loved in the past. For example, both Babylon and Killers of the Flower Moon made my top 5 films last year, but I don't know what it was with this one. Maybe it was the pacing, maybe it was because I like some scenes better than others that kind of just threw me off a bit. But the thing about this film, because it is about a guy who created Broadway shows, so obviously they're going to show some of those shows, I actually enjoyed those scenes much more than the scenes about Ziegfeld himself. The scenes about Ziegfeld himself and his life, quite frankly, I found kind of boring, but the ones with his shows, I couldn't look away from. Especially there was one like kind of in the middle of the movie that was like a show within the movie. So this scene was like 20 to 30 minutes long and had this grandiose stage with amazing dancers and very talented singers. And I remember the stage would spin and like each 5-second interval, we'll say, was like a brand new show, and I was captivated by the whole scene. And another cool thing about this film to me was that I got to see Fanny Brice in action. I have never seen the movie Funny Girl with Barbra Streisand. I have never seen the Broadway show. Anything I know about Fanny Brice is from the recent as in like a year ago, drama with Beanie Feldstein, whatever her name is, and Leah Michele. If you're not in the Broadway sphere, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But even then, given that drama, I learned more about the two actresses than I did Fanny Brice herself. So I knew like the bare minimum. I just knew her name was popular. But she's a very important part of Broadway history and cinema history, so it was cool to just finally see her. And quite frankly, this is a great movie to have on in the background while doing chores. That I would do my chores, like clean my apartment and all that, during the Ziegfeld scenes, and then during anything with one of his shows, that's when I would sit down and like actually watch and pay attention to the movie. But even then, doing my chores, I still understood what was going on. I gave this film 3 out of 5 stars. Then I watched another Oscar Best Picture, and that is The Life of Emile Zola. This is another true story, and it's about Emile Zola, who was a part of the Dreyfus Affair. My notes for this are very short because I thought the political aspect of it was interesting because I got to learn more about the Dreyfus Affair. It's one of those things where like I've always known the name, but I never knew what it was exactly. So that I got to learn, but like outside of that, like to me, this is a very boring and forgettable movie. So I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. But then I watched a documentary. It's called The Beach Boys, and as you can guess, this is about the band The Beach Boys. It explores their lives from the start of their career up until the 1970s. But this documentary as a whole, it's very surface level. It's going to feel fast fast-paced and it doesn't really delve deep into anything. For example, Brian Wilson's mental issues, they're mentioned. It's mentioned that he had them, but they don't talk about what exactly he had and how it affected him. That psychiatrist that messed him up, they don't even mention him at all. Who they do mention though is Charles Manson, but I will get to that. The reason it feels fast-paced though is because they're not delving into anything. They are trying to squish so much that they possibly can into this 2-hour time limit. They go from one topic to another very fast. Pet Sounds, which is considered their best album, one of the best albums of all time, I think only got like 5 minutes of screen time before they moved on to the next album. And even then, when they talked about Pet Sounds, they said it was kind of scary putting it out. They didn't really dive deep into why Brian Wilson was making it and like what he did to make it, and just the fact that like I think it was their dad. He wanted it to be a solo album. He didn't want it to be a Beach Boys album because the dad thought it was going to tank their career. I know that from other sources, not from this documentary. That being said though, I think it is a good introductory documentary. So if you're a Beach Boys fan and have seen all the documentaries, I don't think you'll enjoy this. I think you'll know the majority of the information. But I actually did learn some new things. First of all, I learned about the amount of people that were involved. I didn't realize, like I knew there was Brian Wilson, his 2 brothers, Mike Love, and then the best friend whose name is escaping me right now. But I didn't know that the best friend left at some point and they had to hire a new guy, but then the new guy left and the best friend came back. And then I also didn't know that Brian Wilson wasn't part of the touring group. He was just songwriting and recording. And so other people would replace him over the years, and it was a lot of people. And then I also didn't realize how much music they made. Like admittedly, when it comes to the Beach Boys music, my knowledge doesn't go past Pet Sounds. But even then, like their early 60s stuff and everything in between Pet Sounds, I don't have a lot of knowledge about. So right now I'm trying to go through their entire discography, all of their music basically. I'm up to Surf's Up, which has that really depressing album cover. But then I also learned that Charles Manson was involved in their past, because I think, what's the brother's name? Carl Wilson? It starts with a C. He was involved with Charles Manson. It was like a whole thing. Like they made music together and Carl introduced some of the girls to Charles Manson, some of the girls that he killed. That I really wish they delved into, because again, it only had like 5 minutes of screen time and I was like, what the fuck do you mean he made music with him? But they moved on, so I definitely have to read into that eventually. I will say during the God Only Knows segment, I did cry because I love that song. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. And like seeing pictures of a young Brian Wilson, I can see why Paul Dano was casted as him in Love and Mercy. I ended up giving this movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. The last film I watched in May actually made it to the best film I watched so far this year. And that is A Streetcar Named Desire. This is about a woman who moves in with her sister and she is not getting along with her brother-in-law. There is more to the movie than that, but like, holy shit. I went into this film without reading the synopsis. I had no idea what this was about going into it, and let me tell you, what a ride. This is my first Vivien Leigh film because I have not seen Gone with the Wind yet, and that's arguably her most famous film. This is not my first Marlon Brando movie because I have seen The Godfather, but this is my first young Marlon Brando film. And let me tell you, I would risk it all for him. He was a very attractive man. I didn't know he was in this movie until I was watching it, so when he showed up on screen, I was like, oh. There were a lot of themes to this movie. For example, there was class, because that was a point of contention between Vivien Leigh and Marlon Brando. Vivien Leigh comes from a very, I don't know if it was like very rich, but definitely had more money than Marlon Brando's family, and he was pretty upset about that. Which leads me to the next theme, which is masculinity. This isn't explicitly said, but Marlon Brando's character felt threatened by Vivien Leigh pretty often throughout the film. For example, when it came to money, this was, you know, the 1950s, and I think the play takes place even earlier. This was during a time where men were the breadwinners, so it affected him that this woman made more money than he did, and she often rubbed it in his face. And the masculinity doesn't deal with just the money, that was just an example, but he also is pretty abusive. He abuses his wife, Vivien Leigh's sister, throughout the entire film, and she goes back to him because what else did people do back then? I don't know if that was necessarily common, but it definitely wasn't unheard of for that to happen. It explores illusions, because you have Vivian Lee's character, who's definitely like the main pinpoint of this, but then also her sister, who just wants a normal marriage, and kind of Marlon Brando's character too, just because he has his moments where he's convinced he loves her, but it's like, if you really loved her, you wouldn't do that to her. And then like, all characters just have their fiction versus reality moments. And of course, desire is a big one, because every single one of these main characters wants something more for themselves. I think both Vivian Lee and Marlon Brando did an excellent job playing unlikable but compelling characters. Brando was a huge, as hot as he was a huge asshole in this film, and Vivian Lee's descent into madness was one of the best I've ever seen in film. They both made me very uncomfortable, but then they also both had moments that made me root for them. For example, Vivian Lee pulled her sister aside and was like, hey, you should leave Marlon Brando. And I agreed with her. But then also, Vivian Lee's past wasn't the best, and Marlon Brando called her out on that, and the thing she did, like, she deserved to be called out on. So I was rooting for him in those moments. Even though neither of them were particularly good people, it's still what made both of them feel like very human characters. And I think what made me like this movie so much is that this is a movie that takes place in the 1950s and was filmed in the 50s, but does not glorify the time period. I'm finding that more and more people, whether it's people who grew up in the 50s or it's Gen X or if it's my own generation, because there's like a rise of this in my own generation, people tend to romanticize the 50s, which is just so fascinating to me considering all the stories I've heard about the 50s. Quite frankly, I think I've heard more horror stories about that era than I heard about genuinely good ones, especially from women. Like, it wasn't unheard of for women to be abused. I mean, it's still not unheard of today, but like, think of it back then when women didn't have credit cards, they couldn't get a divorce, they couldn't do some of the things we're legally allowed to do today. It wasn't unheard of for them to be abused and to take medication. Like, so many of these women were on meth just to get through the day. So to go back on topic for this film, it's just, I think I was just shocked by how unglamorous it made life out to be. And I was looking up articles about this movie, and it's actually one of the reasons it was so controversial. I didn't know this was a controversial film, but apparently it was, because it did dare to explore the reality. So I guess in summary of what I'm trying to say, it's the first movie I've seen from this time period that did not glamorize what was happening and did not have a happy ending, and was not part of the horror genre. I've seen other movies from this time period, you know, that were pretty unglamorous, but they either had a happy ending, or if they didn't, it's because they were horror, so it made sense. But this is not a horror film. If you have more recs along the lines of this, let me know. But what a film. I do highly recommend this. If you've seen this video, you're unfortunately not gonna go in cold, but going in cold, this was a ride. But again, I do recommend this if you can stomach it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And now on for the TV shows. I didn't complete a TV show in May. These were all ongoing shows for me. The first one I want to talk about is Demon Slayer, because I watched season 3 and also started season 4. I'm going to talk about them as 2 separate things though, just because my opinions vary wildly, basically. Demon Slayer takes place in 1910s Japan, and it takes place in a universe where demons are running amok at night. Tajiro's younger sister gets turned into a demon, so now he joins the Demon Slayer Corps so he can find a way to turn her back into a human. Season 3 is the Swordsmith Village arc. This aired last year, but I didn't watch it last year because I was reading the manga, so I wanted to wait until I completed that. I watched it just so I could catch up for season 4. I knew this, it was a slog in the manga, so I knew it was going to be a slog in the anime, but somehow the anime made it even worse. Which I don't know how that happens, because I thought like the animation and the music and the voice acting would help, but apparently it did not. And there was some rough CGI this season. But the backstory still made me cry. So moving on to season 4, now we have the Hashira training arc. And the studio Ufotable went hard with the animation, especially in the beginning with the wind and serpent Hashira. That was insane. I am liking the anime only scenes so far. My only worry about this is that this arc is extremely short in the manga, and I do have a feeling the anime is going to stretch it out to make it a complete season, and I'm wondering how they're going to do that and if it's going to affect the pacing really bad. So far I watched 1 episode in June, and I'm already kind of feeling it. I'm feeling the very stretched pacing, and I'm not really liking it, but I'm gonna hold out hope and hope it gets better as the season goes on. The next show I'm gonna talk about is Liberty's Kids. These are 3 kids who work for Benjamin Franklin and lived through the events of the Revolutionary War. This was a PBS kids show back when I was like 5, and you had to be a PBS kid watch at a very specific time because it's only 40 episodes and the reruns didn't last very long. But where I'm at right now, girl, propaganda works. We love to see it. British girl is now a patriot. I thought that happened kind of fast, and now she's a little bit too obnoxious. She's an obnoxious patriot in where I'm at right now. The one thing I liked about the series of episodes I watched this past month, it delved more into the famous Native Americans of history and the Native Americans that helped us with this war, and even those that fought against us. I liked how they were portrayed because when this aired, this was about the time when I was learning about Native Americans and the beginnings of Thanksgiving and Christopher Columbus, and the portrayal of them was always, looking back in retrospect, was just not good. During our Thanksgiving education, we were taught that we were besties. And we obviously know now that was not the case, so I was worried going into the show, but this show does actually rightfully portray us as colonizers. They did not make the Native Americans out to be enemies, even the ones that fought alongside the British, because you have these people invading their land, they joined the British to fight against us. Like, what else were they supposed to do? And that's how that question was actually framed. Like, it was very sympathetic to them. And I liked seeing that given when the show came out. I was worried it was going to be a product of its time. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I was worried it was going to be a product of its time, but I would argue it was ahead of its time. And the last TV show I watched was Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I completed season 6 in May, and I did start season 7. One of my favorite arcs of season 6 was with the clones, because we got more hints about how they eventually became stormtroopers. And I really did like the arc exploring Yoda gain immortality, not literal immortality, but they do explain how we're able to see him in later down the timeline as a Force ghost. And they had great character designs. The ghosts that were helping him, love to see it. The beginnings of season 7, I was really happy that Ahsoka is back, because she's not in season 6, and I was really pissed about that. And I liked meeting Trace and Rafa. Just my only complaints with Trace is that her dialogue is very clunky, but it does get better as the show goes on. And as of filming this, I only have 2 episodes left of the whole show, and I'm so nervous because my heart is hurting, man. Let's move on to the dance play. So what is a dance play? Because I didn't know until I saw this show. But a dance play is technically the same concept as a ballet. It's just not to ballet music or to ballet dancing. For my specific show, it was what I would consider contemporary dance. If you've seen this show and I'm wrong, let me know. But the show I saw was Message in a Bottle. This is about the refugee crisis, and they dance to the music by Sting. I actually really enjoy this. This is not typically my thing. Both this and just normal ballet were never like my go-to. But even because I have a hard time, I think it's a me thing. I do have a hard time following the plot sometimes. But I still think it's just so fascinating how people can tell a story without talking. They can tell a story by just moving their bodies. And in this specific dance play, I really liked how certain movements represented something. Like, one of my favorite scenes was actually a drowning scene, just because the way that was choreographed was, while very sad plot point, it was just visually, it was very beautiful. I did not realize how much of Sting's music I actually knew. When I was reading the titles, I was like, what did I get myself into? I don't know any of this except for like 2 songs, but the rest I was like, what is this? But I recognized almost every song. So there is that, and it did make it more enjoyable. And I liked how the meaning of some of the songs was twisted so that it could be used in specific scenes. Like, because some of the lyrics were definitely taken literally in order for the scene to be portrayed correctly. That's not a critique, I just think it's kind of funny. The one critique I have of this though, I will say that Act 1 was harder for me to follow than Act 2. But with the caveat that just might be a me thing, just because I was still trying to get used to the medium. So by Act 2, I was used to it. So that could be like part of the problem there. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this. If you're a Sting fan and you're a fan of ballets, I actually think you'll like this too. Now for the concerts. The first concert I went to in May was the Teeth of God tour. The opener for this band was called Empire State Bastards. I purposely missed half their set. I listened to some of their music on Spotify, was not a fan. Still, I was hoping the live music would help me appreciate them more. didn't like them. I think I did take a video of the set though, so I'll still insert that. Who I really wanted to see though, the headliner of this tour, was Sleep Token. I have slowly become obsessed with this band over the past few months. I had no idea who they were until about September of last year. It wasn't until November that I actually listened to my first song. And at first I was like, okay, this is a good band to just vibe to, like have them on in the background while I do chores, while I'm at work. But like, the more I listened to them, the more obsessed I became. Like, I love their visuals. I love the guy's voice. I'm obsessed with how deep it is. I love their lyrics, and I love how they mix genres. I actually can't tell you what genre this band is. Some people consider them metal. The metal scene, at least on Twitter, seems to really hate them. To me, they're more so like rock, metal, core, but I'm also really bad with genres. All I know is that some of their songs make me want to headbang, some make me want to curl up in bed and cry, and other songs make me want to shake my ass. When it comes to this concert itself, I was really impressed with the stage presence. First of all, the lead singer, Vessel, he sounds exactly like he does on the album. And yes, his name is Vessel. That's his pseudonym. All 4 members of the band go by pseudonyms. There's Vessel 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, and 4, their names are written as the Roman numerals. And their identities are kept a secret. They all wear masks. If you dig deep, you can find out who these people are, but I have chosen not to. I want to keep it a mystery. But then when it comes to like the looks of the stage, I really enjoyed that too. Vessel had a really cool altar. The drummer had his own platform. There were backup singers that had their own platform, and they were gorgeous. I love their outfits, and they were also part of the shtick with like, you know, anonymity. Love their voices. They sound like angels. They're not anonymous on social media. Like, you can go to their Instagram page and they are outside of the mask because they are backup singers for multiple bands. But I thought their high voices went really well with Vessel's deep voice. And I love the lighting of the show. I didn't expect this band to have like a light show during their performance. And one of the things I was so fascinated by when it came to this concert is that there was no talking. This band doesn't do interviews. They were really trying to be anonymous, but I thought they would at least say some words on stage, but there was nothing. It was just all about the music. And like, I've never been to a concert like that before where the bands just said nothing. And I didn't realize how much I would enjoy that. Like, it was purely about the music, and it was nice to just vibe with my fellow fans and just have a good time. They played my favorite songs, and I will insert clips of that, and I am to this day still going through post-concert depression. I had such a great time at this show, and I do think it's funny that as soon as the show ended, they started playing, not the band, but the venue started playing I Wanna Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston, and literally everyone got up to dance, and we were all like bopping and singing along as we were trying to leave the venue. And what's particularly funny is that Sleep Token actually covered that song, not at the concert, but there's a recorded cover on Spotify, and it's so sad. It sounds really sad. It makes me like, while Whitney Houston makes me want to shake my ass, Sleep Token makes me want to cry. I adore this concert. It was definitely one of the best concerts I've ever been to, and listen, I saw them May 20th. It is now June 6th. Post-concert depression, man. I cannot wait to see them again eventually. And the final thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the Let the Ocean Take Me tour. There were 4 bands for this tour. I listened to the music of the first 3 because I've never heard of them. I did not like what I heard of the 2 openers, Mugshot and Dying Wish, so I purposely showed up late to the show to not see them. But the first band I saw, Currents. I thought they did a pretty great job, and I will listen to more of their music after this. actually wanted to see was the Amity Affliction. They were one of my favorite bands in high school, and Let the Ocean Take Me was one of my favorite albums in high school. It came out when I was 16. I am now 26. This was the 10th anniversary tour, and although I don't really listen to Amity Affliction anymore, I stopped listening to them after the Misery album. I felt the need to see this because they were playing the entire album live, and like some of those songs I never heard live, so I just had to go. I was a little worried at first because that afternoon, actually, so not even the morning of, it was like 3 hours before the concert started, I found out that the singer, because this band mixes screamo with singing, the singer was booted off the rest of the tour. Not the band, he's not booted out of the band, but he's going through like addiction problems, I guess, so they booted him off the tour, and it was like 2 days before my concert date. So a new guy had to take over. I didn't know what to expect, but you know what? He did a fantastic job, and apparently he had to learn the set in 2 days, and it was just so funny because the screamo guy, his name's Joel, he was like, yeah, you know this guy from True North, and I was like, no the fuck I don't, I've never heard of that band. Either way, did a great job. And you know what? I truly felt like I was 16 again, which was the whole goal of going. They also played songs outside of the Let the Ocean Take Me album. They played Open Letter, which was one of my favorite songs when I was 14, and when they played that, I felt so alive. And I remember hearing that song at Warped Tour back when I was in high school, and it was no, this was actually the college show, because I saw them in high school, then I saw them at Warped Tour when I was in college, and it was raining during the song, and it was an outdoor venue, and I'm sitting there like this, screaming, arms in the air, and never have I felt more alive than that moment. And this song at this concert recaptured that. There was also a little monologue for Aaron, the singer who was booted, and I thought that was very sweet. Like, everyone cheered for him. And this low-key made me wish high school and Warped Tour, because like this was I discovered them through Warped Tour. Like, this was the music of Warped Tour during my high school days, and I kind of missed them. I did try listening to their most recent albums, all the ones after Misery, and I can't get into it. My music taste has evolved. But you know what? I had a good nostalgic time. And you know who else I hope had a good time? This little girl I saw, because like I said, this band, it's a metalcore band. I guess that's what they're considered. Again, I'm bad with genres. But given that they're a mix of screamo and singing and, you know, have heavy instruments, you can guess that the majority of the audience was dressed in black tees. We were all wearing Vans. A lot of people in the audience were tatted head to toe. People had a bunch of piercings. Some people had their ears stretched to the point you could fit your fist through them. But I saw a little girl, no older than 5, on her presumably father's shoulders, wearing a big white tutu and big pink headphones with cat ears on them. And I hope she had the best day of her life. This video. Thanks for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts, if you've seen any of these things, if you listen to this music. If you like this video, give it a big thumb. Did you just push me? If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. Without further ado, I'm gonna peace out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao a tutti.